All right, all right, all
Right.
right.
I think you gotta slow that down a little bit to a little all
No, no,
right.
no. I like to
Oh, okay.
be not smooth at all. If
Oh,
as
okay.
as awkward as possible is generally my vibe. I don't know if you know that about me, but that's
You
what
don't
I'm
want to be all
going for.
cool like
No,
oh wow, his name just flew out of my head.
McConaughey.
Yeah,
No,
McConaughey. That's right.
no,
Yeah.
I do not. I want people to have that. Like when people see Matthew McConaughey, they think like, oh, hey, I want to talk to that guy. I want people to
Yeah.
hear me and see me and go, that seems weird. I'm just gonna leave that alone. You know? Yeah. Like in a public space, I just want to be that. I don't want to be like, I don't want people to be scared, but I just don't want people to feel like it's worth talking to me, probably, because it's just gonna feel awkward in the end. You know what I mean? That's
Yeah,
kind
I
of what
got you.
I'm going for. Yeah.
I got you. I mean,
All
I know you,
right.
so I wouldn't think that, but yeah, I mean,
Mm,
trying to figure out if I didn't know you, would that be?
yeah.
So I don't know. It's
My
tough.
favorite is to kind of just try to do that awkward, like stutter thing where it's like you like lack confidence. The stuttering that comes from
Mm,
lacking confidence, not from like having a speech issue. You know what I mean? But like,
I see. Yeah.
just be like, hey, how's everybody doing today? You know, like that kind of, I like to do that a lot when I introduce myself to people in public, just to get that out of the way, try
Yeah.
to look as
Yeah.
unapproachable as possible. Yeah, Josh, but like, not again, not in a scary way, just in a way that people are like, hmm, I don't know. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
I got better things to do with my time than talk to that guy. Yeah.
Yeah.
That
I
kind
want
of
to be
thing.
just approachable enough that if you have a reason to talk to me, that you will, but you won't come to bother me with nonsense. Just like that edge. It's a fine line to really to ride. Your best friends kept a Barbie doll hanging out of the backpack in high school so nobody would talk to him. That's Chris, that's what I'm talking about. That level, you know? Oh goodness. Well, hello everybody that is currently rolling in. Appreciate you guys joining us today. We don't have Oscar Minks today. So
We
dad's
do
out
not.
again.
Dad's out. Yep. Left us here to our own devices. So
Yeah,
who knows what's gonna happen? Could get weird.
I
I
don't
think it's
know.
gonna at some point in time, right? I mean, you sent
Yeah.
me something weird earlier. I mean, it's not weird, it's awesome, but you know what I mean.
Well, look, I've been kind of enamored by that whole. So what I sent him was an AI generated or LLM generated. Stop using the word AI. Let's take that back. LLM generated music, song. I know a lot of people are kind of it's getting out there. I don't know how many people that are listening right now have received any links from friends or messed around with things like that, but I received one just about the stupidest subject, right? Like about playing video games and stuff. And then I quickly started using it to generate all kinds of things because why not, right?
Sure. Yeah.
So I gave it a prompt earlier before we started this about just I wanted a song, a pop song about a podcast called the Hackle Box where we talk about security news but often get distracted and talk about food instead. And it did a great job. It did a great job.
I really
So
did. Really did. I did share it with one guy on my team who thought it was great as well. So
yeah,
yeah, that's it's pretty good. Pretty good.
risk accepted. Are you talking, Michael? Are you talking about the talking to me risk? Just don't do it. No,
I
I'm
was
just
yeah, I was
playing.
trying to figure
I've
out if it
talked to
was
Michael a
that.
decent amount, or was it something else? Was it AI
I was, tr-
music? What?
I was trying to figure if it was that or just that we don't have dad around today. Sure if that was
Mm,
the yeah,
no
yeah, there you
Oscar
go.
being absent. That one also
Yeah.
adds up. Yeah. What if we start
Hmm.
out weird? What if? What if?
Well, yeah, I think we did.
No if then there.
Yeah. Yeah,
All right.
we haven't even gotten into food or security yet, so I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know.
I don't have any good food stuff this week.
I
I've
don't
been
have a
eating
good
pretty
segue stuff other than us just being
yeah.
awkward. Me being
Let's,
awkward.
let's just
Yeah. Hi, hi,
hi,
hi, hey
hi.
everybody, welcome to the podcast where we talk about hacking and vulnerabilities and stuff. We're gonna start off today talking about what do we want to talk about?
Uh let's uh yeah, we didn't come with an order, did we? We're
All right,
wholly
well, a big one,
unprepared.
a big one has been XZ tools,
Yeah.
right? Or Utils, XZ Utils, backdoor. I mean, I've had a lot of people asking me about it. I don't even know, not even necessarily asking a specific question about it, just asking in like, how do you feel about it? And I'm like, that's a loaded one. I feel my typical usual amount of scared about the world when you talk about it. You know what I mean? I guess.
Yeah.
Um, like it's one of those things where I think we've been talking about. We talked about supply chain stuff on this podcast a decent amount, every time we ever talk about it, it's just like, yeah, I mean, there's going to be those things that are sleeping that people have been working on that you just don't hear about. You don't know. We don't know how long they might dwell. I mean, in this particular case, someone dwelled, but the actual attack itself didn't dwell for very long. It was discovered extremely quick, right? Um,
Yeah.
once some changes came out that actually affected something, but yeah.
Yeah, funny enough, so that was kind of my take on it too. And I guess a little bit of background because we did kind of just jump in, which is, what we do. But Utils, it's a component in Linux distributions. There was a piece of it that was altered with a backdoor, essentially, um, at sort of the project level. And since it's open source, it was able to happen.
Mhm.
And then that got pushed out to some Linux
Well,
versions.
I mean, to be fair, not just because it was open source, it was able to happen. That's a dangerous statement.
True. Yeah, that's right. So I was going somewhere with that,
Yeah.
but you're absolutely right. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, not just because it's open source, not yeah. But yeah, it did happen. Um, got pushed out to some Linux versions. In particular, it seemed like it was more the bleeding edge, like dev type versions, right? Your unstable releases, that kind of thing. I don't think it made it into the stable ones, because, like Eric said, it was
Correct.
caught really quickly.
Yeah.
Um, and so where I was going with the open source piece is that I think a lot of people do in fact think, oh, because this is open source, this is so easy to do. But I kind of take the opposite view of that of because it was open source, it got found really quickly. I think is kind of my thoughts on it.
Yeah. I shouldn't, I mean, I don't agree that it got found based, like the speed at which it got found was based on it being open source. It was
Okay.
based on a certain amount of luck and
Mhm.
determination. You know what I mean? But I guess the discovery of something off and then being able to initiate and like discover exactly what it was, like the speed at which we were able to get to the detail of the issue is because it's open source, right? I guess, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense.
It's not like there was like a million people just combing through the code because something had updated. No, it was someone
True.
found it, and then because it was open source, was able to get their hands on that, and people could look at it, and people could jointly go through and start looking at it more in depth and track down the process of it, right? It came to light very quickly. I mean, we're so used to with closed source things with a company. I mean, someone might find something, they disclose it to them, on the side ahead of, before it gets released. They disclose that, and then they go through. They might take 6 months to patch the dang thing without saying anything about it,
Yeah.
right? And then they finally release it, and it's with the patch, and then all of a sudden it's like, this could have been being attacked for the last 6 months or something, right? Um, with the open source, that shortens that window at least. People will know about it faster generally when that comes out, and get to the heart of it faster. It gets fixed faster. Things happen like that. So
Right. Yeah,
yeah,
no, that makes perfect sense. I totally agree with you there. But yeah, like you said, we have talked about this a lot because it's gonna happen. Um, we talked about it with I mean things like Log4j. Um, there was another one that I had that just left my brain. Um, but yeah, it's certainly always a possibility that things are going to get, and even in non-open source things too, right? That's kind of what we were saying. Plenty of opportunities for things like this to happen. One of the concerns that we saw with well, I think it was the NetScaler one, right? Was that they were compromised and then dropped in malicious code into an update that then went out. So that's certainly not open source.
that's right.
So yeah, lots of possibility there for that kind of thing. But I'm with you. I'm pretty pumped this got at least caught and fixed really quickly. Because
Yeah,
saw this come
yeah,
out and went, oh no, and then okay, well, got it handled.
yeah. Caught
So
while it was still only in the kind of bleeding edge, unstable releases, which is nice. And obviously, like I said, we talk about this all the time. I think the sense that I think nobody, and then maybe I'm wrong about this. There might be some kind of articles out there that do talk about some other um, more intricate campaigns to spending years building to the point of trying to do something like
mhm.
this. um at least it's not something we're hearing about a lot, but it's something that's always in the back of my mind when I think about these things. It's like, yeah, someone got in and then they just immediately did what they do, right? And that's what we see with attackers a lot. is that they get into a company, they get into a thing, and they just immediately go. They try to go as fast as they can. They don't try to dwell very long, and they try to do things right. That's not to say that some people don't dwell a lot longer. Generally, more
Yeah.
sophisticated attackers, things like that. But we all know that that's a possibility. We all know that there's probably, you know, someone living in some environment close to us. I mean, maybe not ours, but someone we know or something like that, like who isn't struck yet potentially, right? There's always that possibility, and it's the same thing for supply chain stuff, right? Like someone working their way in to get in for the ability to be a contributor to the code or in a company uh waiting to drop some kind of backdoor in their software after a compromise, whatever it might be. We have to be conscious of those things at least.
Yeah, the dwell time discussion is always a hard one for me because we get asked it a lot, right? Is, how, how often do you see attackers come in and immediately hit something versus how often do you see them, they've been laying in wait for a month or two or six or whatever. It's very difficult because it is kind of what you talk about, right? It's very sophisticated attackers sometimes will linger for a very long time, or other times they will just say, okay, I know I need to get this done really quickly before I get caught and get back out.
Hmm.
So it's such a difficult conversation, and I don't think you'll see studies and metrics pop up from time to time about it, but I don't know how accurate those are. Right? It's all about the data set they're checking.
Yeah,
Um,
it's a
business
complicated topic.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah. And like with email compromise, we often see that those are really quick, right? The attacker gets in, they try to get the uh account numbers changed for an electronic funds transfer, things like that really, really quickly. Most of the time. But then sometimes we'll pop in to investigate one of those and then see that, oh no, they were compromised 2, 3, 4 months ago, and this attacker just, I guess, has been waiting to see when the right opportunity to jump in is. And so yeah, it's really all over the place. So
Well,
yeah.
and with the state of things now, with how much like ransomware as a service and stuff like that there is, and how many groups are not doing the initial breaches, right? But instead taking those initial breaches and then finishing them out, right? However you want to word, there's a couple different
Mhm.
words, a couple different terms for that relationship I've heard. I'm not going to get in the details of it, but like people will go out, they'll compromise something and then they'll sell that to someone or they'll give that to someone for a percentage of the cut if it gets compromised, right? And that's going to cause interesting delays in dwell time too. You know, the initial breach might happen. This person might start fishing around for like who's the best place to take this to? Should I do some stuff for myself? Should I hand this off somewhere else? Should I go with some other service, right? And so you're going to have a little bit of a dwell that's just that, and then people getting up and spinning up in that environment and actually going for the kill, if you will, right?
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
and so yeah,
Yeah.
it's
Hitting
changed. I mean, like that
their
didn't exist,
objectives.
that didn't really, I mean, I'm not gonna say it didn't exist, but it wasn't a standard way of operating back 15 years ago. You know, when
No.
some of the ransoms first started happening and stuff, or 10 years ago even, right? Like when some of those were happening, they were much quicker. It was like they had created their ransom software, they were just getting in and delivering it, right? Um, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, for the most part, really, ransomware as a service has, I mean, 5 years ago, maybe is kind of when it
Yeah.
started becoming a thing. Um, yeah. And I do know, like, that is one thing that we kind of included today as one of the topics. It's not really what the topic is, but kind of leads into that. And we can go ahead and roll over into that a little bit if you want. Um, so we've got our, I don't want to say first, but sort of first publicized AI written sort of piece of malware, right? It was a PowerShell script um, that looks to have been written by, I'm sorry, the LLM. To take it back to what Eric was talking about earlier, like let's take that back and call it an LLM instead of an AI. I have trouble with both of those acronyms with my accent, and
Mm,
so I
sure.
struggle. AI kind of rolls off a little better for me because every now and then LLM gets stuck in there.
Yeah.
But
I mean, I think that's not even accent based. Saying
that could
LLM
be
can be a little bit weird anyway. Yeah.
could be yeah. Well, so these folks used an LLM to build PowerShell scripts to do some bad things. And to me, what was really funny about this one was if you looked at the code, they just left the comments in from the LLM, and like it's pretty obvious that this is what this is from. If you've done any playing with LLMs to generate malicious scripts, that I mean, I certainly have not. No, I have been
Sure, you
testing, right?
haven't. Yeah.
Yeah, 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 definitely for testing. It's testing, right? It's educational purposes only.
Yeah.
But it absolutely looks like that. It's kind of funny. It's just, they're good comments. I mean, I'm proud of the LLM for having good code comments, but
Hmm.
Yeah, they did that.
I
And
just one
yeah,
of the things I love about this article, first and foremost, the article is talking about how people believe that it was probably generated by an LLM. They don't know for
mhm,
sure, right? But what I
right,
love about this article is it just takes me back. Go back. Eric, 20 years ago or something like that, right? Going to college, going to programming classes, and having all my instructors mark down my assignments because I didn't comment my code enough. And I sat there arguing, people don't comment their code that much. You don't comment every line of code. That's ridiculous. Nobody
mhm,
does that. Nobody should do that. And I was told over and over again, well, if you're going to get a job in a programming team in the programming world, you got to be able to do that. You do have, that's required. And I was like, well, I'm not going to do that job. And here I am not doing that job. But I always thought it was robotic back then, and I love that now it's an indicator that something else created this dang thing. Like when I was reading that, I was laughing. It was just like, we believe it was probably written by an LLM because every line is commented about its functionality. But like, yeah, well, according to my old college instructors, that's how you're supposed to do it in the first place. But
yeah, yeah. But very obviously, nobody does, and
yeah,
so
yeah,
when it happens, it's like, oh, that's weird.
yeah.
That's weird. Yeah.
Hmm.
No, I totally agree. I mean, it would be nice if all code, including malcode and malicious
Yeah.
scripts, were commented. It'd be really helpful for us on the defense side, because you know, I know more than once I've hollered at Eric and been like, "Hey, man, I don't know what this is doing. Um,
Yeah,
look at it with me. I can't
if it
tell what's
had
going on here."
comments,
Yeah, if I
it'd
had
be a lot
comments,
easier.
just leave Eric alone. Just be like, "Oh, it
Yeah.
says right here that it's hacking the thing. I'm good. All right, this is the part that hacks the thing."
I
But
read
yeah, yeah.
I read through this article, and this one's talking about well, this I'll let you talk about what it is. I read through this article though, and one of the things too that did occur to me is that yes, that is true. A lot of people do not comment every line, and why would they type of thing, right? My college professor, I told you so, anonymous attendee on the Q&A. Thank you. Thank you. Um, one of the things I thought when I was looking at this though is that there is certain situations where when I write code, malicious code, especially, and I comment it line by line like this, I have done it. It's not just because it's generated from AI or LLM, right? It sometimes I'll do it because I'm giving it to someone who I want to be able to not come back to me for help, right?
Right.
Whatever that situation might be. That might be internally on my team. I'm writing something up and I'm helping kind of get something started for R&D or for one of my red teamers or something like that. And I'm like, here's a good base. Here's some stuff. I recommend changing it, tweaking it for some evasion and stuff. But at least you have this. And I will comment most of the lines so they know exactly what the goal is, so that they can start to learn from it and also change it as they go, right? Similarly, but though not that I've ever done this, and this isn't one of those, I've never done this, but I have. No, I really haven't. But if I were making something to sell to someone, right,
Mhm.
I would do that potentially too. Like if it was like I'm doing this as a service, right? Like I'm creating this malware for you, and I want you to be able to not come back to me for updates, not come back to me for things. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm not certain. I mean, that could be part of what this is, right? Because so one of the things about this particular one is that they're attributing it to a group, TA547, also known as Scully Spider. We're getting out of control with the names, um, but they're essentially an initial access broker. And so, like Eric mentioned earlier, there's a lot of terms for kind of how this stuff plays out, and that's one of them. And so, what the initial access brokers do is, I mean, it's pretty evident in the name, but they will go and exploit something like, let's say, the Palo Alto thing that Josh mentioned in the chat here. We'll talk a little bit more about later. But they will exploit that, gain the foothold or whatever, and then like Eric mentioned, sometimes they sit back and wait and try to decide, who do I want to sell this to, who can I give this to, should I do this myself, that kind of thing, right? And so there are a lot of these initial access brokers out there now, and that's why oftentimes when we're working an attack, we may see something got hit in January initially, and then we're not actually seeing the attack until March. And then it also kind of looks like it comes from a totally different attacker. um, we used to think about that more as, well, this may have been two separate attackers, that kind of thing. But now we have to take into account, was this just an initial access broker that hit them on the first one and then handed that off to somebody else? And so with that, it's the kind of mentioned that, this particular information stealer piece of malware has been, distributed since September 2022, which is odd. I'm sorry, that's a different piece of malware. But either way, the point is like these same groups are involved in this, and maybe they are trying to sell it right under the sort of malware as a service commented out, so that the person purchasing it can then use it without having to come back and ask for support, essentially.
Yeah. And on this article, they do go on to like generate some similar code and get some very similar stuff, right? And I do think looking at the example they gave, this probably is an LLM, but just
Mhm.
saying it's not for sure. And it doesn't really matter. Like, do we know that people are using LLMs to do write code? Yeah.
Yeah,
The day that Chat GPT like started going around the world, right? Because it was out for however long, but then there was that day where everybody here heard about it. Like everybody all of a sudden it just went crazy, right? That I remember that day, like later that same day I heard about it, I saw people all over Twitter posting, I got it to generate this code for me. I had a friend 2 days later was like, I got it to generate this malware for me. And I was like, yeah, good job. Like we know. You know
yeah,
what I mean? So I think that's the thing about this situation is that like people are kind of just creating an article saying like, hey, we think we found one where they're doing the thing we've said that they're going to be doing it. We know that they're doing. Um,
right.
yep. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so too. That was kind of, as I was talking to folks about it this week, it was just, yeah, we knew this was going to happen. We knew it was probably already happening. So now we just have an example. Like this is just here.
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
um, not any indication yet that the LLMs are taking over, and we need to wait for somebody to come back from the future and try to help us out. But uh, so
They can make some pretty decent music now, though. Ooh, we.
it can. I mean, do you have a way to share that? Do you want to share that?
I mean, I can share the same link I shared with you earlier.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
Um,
I just don't know if you could play it through here or whatever you wanted. We probably should have done it
oh,
at the top of the show.
I would have had to probably be prepared for that. Yeah, I probably
Hmm.
would have had to be prepared for that. Look, I take no responsibility for anything to do with this website whatsoever. I'm going to put a link in chat that 100%. I'm not saying that there's anything not malicious about this link. I don't, you know what I mean? It's one of those situations where I don't know. It's one of those AI. It's a suno.com if you guys haven't heard about it. Here I go advertising for someone. Um, but I'll go ahead. Yeah, risk is accepted, right? I'll put this is just like what I told you guys, the prompt for the I'll put the prompt in chat too. This is the prompt I gave it. And this is one of the songs it came up with. For anyone who's interested in exploring the world of AI music now, it was kind of surprisingly good. But
Yeah, I thought so too. I was very impressed with it. I mean,
yeah.
it's not like all choppy and strange like I expected. Yeah, and Troy, I'm not gonna do an Arnold voice. It's hard to mesh Austrian and hillbilly and get it all in there together.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah,
All right. Well, look, you guys can listen to that now afterwards, or just completely not click the link because I don't know anything about
I was
this
suspicious. I
site.
clicked it anyway, but I was
Yeah,
suspicious when Eric sent it over.
yeah.
So I get it.
Um, Launch it in a VM. Do whatever you want to do. That said, we've got a couple things, healthcare related stuff, hospital related. You want to jump into one of these? Want to talk about Change Healthcare?
Yeah, yeah. Let's talk about that. You want me to cue this one up? Or?
Well, I'll just say, this is another topic we've kind of hit on before. I think last month actually we talked a little bit about attackers kind of doing some damage to their reputation a little bit, and I think
Mhm.
this kind of goes in line with that. Alpha V or Alpha Black Cat, whatever we want to call them, had hit Change Healthcare back in February, correct?
Yeah, was it February? Has it been that long? I guess so. Yeah, yeah, February.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
And then they kind of shut down. Got shut down, after being raided by the FBI. But what apparently happened was that Change Healthcare during that event, they did pay them $22 million ransom payment. All right.
Allegedly, nobody's confirmed
Allegedly,
it. Yeah,
allegedly.
yeah, just
Um,
for legal purposes there.
yes. And now under a new group has emerged, Ransom Hub, that sports some members potentially allegedly from Alfie. And now they're coming back after Change saying we want more money to not release your data, even though they allegedly already paid in the past. So yeah, I mean, this is an interesting one too, because we talked about people ruining their reputations a little bit by doing stuff like this, coming back and going back after them. And a lot of times you don't want to do that. A lot of times you want people to believe that if they pay you, you will go on your word, you will delete their data, you'll get them their data back, their keys, whatever it might be, right? Stuff like that. But in the case of a group folding and a new group coming into the scene, having maybe some of this information out there, well, that's weird. That's a weird gray area. But I don't know. What do you think about it?
Yeah, so this one in particular, and I'm just going to put one big giant allegedly in front of this, all of this,
All
because
of it.
we don't have exact details on this stuff. It's all just kind of speculation and what we're hearing through different places and that kind of thing. But with this one in particular, right? So the Alpha V group was a ransomware as a service operator. They have affiliate groups who are the ones that are actually doing the work, right? They're working the compromise, they're doing the encryption and the exfiltration, that kind of thing. Alpha V then kind of, they provide the toolkit and the encryptors and that kind of thing, and then also sort of handle the payments and the negotiations is generally how that works. In this particular instance, since they were allegedly paid $22 million, the Alpha V group kind of said, yep, we're out because they got raided or whatever, but that money's was never, as far as we know, it was never given to the affiliate group, their cut of it, because they
Hmm.
should get a percentage of it.
Right.
And so from what we've heard, man, it's hard to walk around with all this stuff because I don't know. I don't want somebody to sue me. I don't have anything to give them anyway. But
Yeah.
yeah,
I
like you
can't
get my
pay your $22 million
right. I mean,
ransom,
you
that's
could
for sure.
take my shed. I don't know. But yeah. So it looks like the affiliate group didn't get their cut. And where that got tricky was they're usually the ones who hold the exfiltrated data, and generally hold the access into the victim's systems. And so one of the things we were concerned about when we heard all this going on was like they're going to want to get paid. They're going to try to get their money somehow. And so now it kind of looks like maybe they've partnered up with Ransom Hub or whatever the case may be there, and they're like, "Hey, we've got your data. We'd like some money now, please."
Yeah.
And so that is a concern. My read on this is that this isn't like a secondary attack. I think people thought that initially is that, oh, Change got hit, Change Health got hit
Right.
again. I don't read that this way. I read this as exactly what we thought would
No,
happen
I
a
read
month
it the
ago.
same way too. I mean, and that's a month ago. Is this was it changed that we were talking about a month ago?
Yeah, I think so. Yep.
I mean, we just knew a month ago, all right, what I recall, I shouldn't say what we knew. What I recall was that we were talking about them going under not paying affiliates,
Mhm.
right? I didn't, but yeah, if it was this one, I mean, yeah, it's exactly what we predicted, right? Like, I
Yeah,
mean, like they're
yeah,
gonna go back after it, they're gonna try to get paid. And
yeah, exactly. Yep.
seems like they are. Double ransom all the way. I mean, look, it's a little greedy, Troy, just saying. Okay. I'm just saying. Um,
Yeah, it's it is weird. I mean, it's funny. I mean, I'm not taking up for the affiliate group, but like, I mean, they never got paid. They did the work, they did the stuff, they never got their money. If I'm that on that evil side of things, I'm going to want to get paid for my efforts, and especially on something that big. And realistically, I think we probably talked about this then too, but they went after a pretty high profile target. Something's going to make a lot of noise, and when you do that, you do run the risk of getting a lot of government entities involved, which seems to be what happened here.
yeah.
Still, I would love to hear all of the details on this and how this all played out. Like, I mean, did Alpha V actually take off with the money? Did 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 that payment somehow get tweaked somewhere? I don't know. It's weird. But yeah,
Yeah,
exactly
I'm
what we talked
sure
about.
there's more to it than that.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, and just kind of the grander lesson there is that, like we talked about then, traditionally we leaned toward, I mean, so FRSecure and all of us here generally lean toward don't pay, right? I mean, like that's just why give the criminals money. They're just going to use that money to do more bad things, that kind of thing. But also, there are circumstances where folks just kind of had to, right? Like you either pay or you don't have a business tomorrow, and you've got to weigh those risks. That's on you to figure out. But this makes that an even more muddy decision because I mean not just this one in particular, but we've just seen a lot of this where the FBI is taking down groups and they're finding that the data that an attack group exfiltrated and said they deleted is still sitting on their servers. They didn't actually delete it. So now you're getting to this area of like, I mean, kind of why pay when they're not doing even the things we thought they would do? And I think for years they did. I think they were pretty good about it, though. Kind of seeing some of that stuff now calls that into question. But yeah, it makes it an even tougher decision for executives and folks to make whenever these attacks happen, unfortunately.
Which, as I said last month, I'm a proponent of that
Hmm.
scenario. I mean, it's really rough for the people who get compromised. Never
Yeah.
want to see them in any bigger of a bind ever. But the more we have reason not to pay these people, the better, in my
Yeah.
opinion. You know what I mean? So yeah,
Yeah, agreed. It's, and on the response side, those are always difficult conversations, right? These are never conversations that I enjoy being a part of. I mean, obviously we will do it and help you as much as possible, and that's what we're here for. But it's draining, right? I mean, it's a tough conversation to be having with folks of like, are we going to be in business tomorrow if we don't pay this
yeah,
criminal group a bunch of money? And that's tough to hear people talk about. So yeah, I don't know. Hopefully we just get to the point where these guys go away, but I don't think that's happening. So.
yeah. Well, and especially, I mean, like that conversation is obviously nothing you ever want to be part of or have to hear, right? I shouldn't say be
Mhm.
part of, but um,
Right.
I mean, on top of it, when it's healthcare, health groups, healthcare companies, hospitals, things like that. I
Yeah.
mean, like it's that much, more difficult too. I feel like in a lot of ways. I mean, one, your people's data, people's privacy, people's whatever, right? But also people, the care for people and stuff like that too. So
Yeah.
yeah,
The Change Healthcare one in particular put a lot of people in some really awkward and difficult positions. And I obviously can't get into details on a lot of that, right? But I just know that there were a lot of organizations out there trying to do the right thing that were impacted by this in some secondary way, right? They're just
yeah,
they're they're connected to these companies in certain ways, and then they had to make a lot of difficult decisions based on that. And it's really tough. And I I hate to see that we have kind of over the last few months here seen a little bit more of a target on healthcare's back. I know the attackers kind of took it easy on them in like 2020 and such, and or at least said they did. But it seems like they've been targeted pretty heavily here recently, in a lot of different ways, right? Not just ransomware attacks. It's kind of been all over the place. But
yeah,
um, yeah, that one's always tough. It's you're making decisions that could potentially really impact someone's life or, that kind of thing. So
yeah.
always tough. But
Mm,
that does bleed over into sort of the next topic.
yeah,
Essentially just that the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services um, kind of warning healthcare folks that their help desks are being targeted. Um, this is not I don't want to see this as an abnormal attack technique, right? This is certainly a thing. I know like your guys test it sometimes with like phishing tests and things like that. I got to
yeah,
sit in on one of those a while back. It's kind of neat to hear how that all played out. Um, but but yeah, but essentially they're acquiring information about employees. Sometimes very sensitive information like social security numbers, that kind of thing. And then calling into the help desk with kind of the, hey, I broke my phone. I need to reset my username and password and add a new multi-factor device and that kind of thing, and then using that to sort of gain that first level of access. And these are
yeah.
specifically targeting healthcare.
Yep, like the MGM. Yep.
Yep,
The,
exactly.
this is obviously not new. I mean, this social engineering and stuff like that. It goes back. We've heard plenty of um grand stories about such things in the past. I mean, especially like looking at like Kevin Mitnick's life and stuff like that, seeing certain
Mhm.
social engineering attacks, both physically, like in person and over the phone and stuff, right? But that is a thing that has been a little bit outside of the realm for the common um the common mal actors. I feel like, you know what I mean. It's like, yes, we know that this is a thing. It's extremely successful, unfortunately, and people are very aware of it, but generally it's a more targeted thing. And I feel like a lot of times what we're hearing about with the general ransom, campaigns and things like that is that they're not as targeted. I mean, sometimes they are, but honestly a lot of times they're not so targeted. They
Yeah.
are, like you said, initial access brokers, right? They're shotgunning things out there. They're trying to see what they can hit. They get some hits and they send those hits out. And some of the ones you hear about are going to be bigger because, but that doesn't mean they're targeted. If they hit something that's really big and they take advantage of that, we're going to hear about it. So it feels targeted sometimes, but a lot of times it's not. But generally, these types of things become more targeted because you have to specifically learn something about certain employees. You have to reach out to that specific organization before you've even compromised them, versus the other way around, where you throw out a blanket of compromise, or attempted compromise, and then see what came through the filter. This is definitely different. We did on the our red team just last month, I believe. We did a vishing engagement with a client. And similar to this, our goal on that was to reach out to their support, their help desk support, and say that we were users of the system, and to try to reset passwords or reset MFA devices. And we were very successful in that engagement. It is far too often that this is very easy to do. You know what I mean? So
Yeah, yeah, and I do wonder, is this kind of a sort of a lingering effect of things like where everybody started working from home in 2020, and we've kind of, we talked about a lot of things like this back then, but I think people were more hyper aware of it at the time because it was like, okay, everything's weird now. Let's be really careful and find different ways to verify and that kind of thing. And things are just, folks haven't gone back to the office as much as, they were before, obviously. And so now it's like, well, this is normal, right? Eric breaks his phone 3 times a week because he throws it at the wall, whatever. So it's normal. It's just, let's do what he needs to do here so we don't get yelled at.
yeah, I mean, I kind of disagree. I mean, like, I shouldn't say
Yeah.
disagree. You're saying I wonder, right? I kind of don't
Yeah.
think that's
Yeah.
the case.
Okay.
But I do think there's some elements to that. But I mean, man, I do feel like honestly, security is getting better, just very
Hmm.
slowly and not very big strides. I do think it's better though than it used to be. I think that people didn't really ask at all. You could say your name, and as long as they were like, "Oh, wait, you have an account for that name. That's good."
That's
And
valid.
people
Yeah.
are
Yeah.
requiring more these days, but it's still not enough. The fact is, people have always wanted to help people, and people always want to have
Mhm.
good customer service ratings and stuff like that. People don't want to, one, be on a call for a long time, don't want to have to escalate to their manager a lot. They don't want, I mean, they might lose this job in this call center that they're working in, or whatever it might be, right? Depending on what we're talking about here. There's a lot of people who don't really want to make waves. They just want to help people. And as long as they can get through that pretty smoothly without making too many mistakes, they're good. Um, I mean, come on, everybody on this call, when's the last time you called anything and got off the call, or like got into your account information or made a change and thought, I don't feel like they asked me enough to really know it was me. I mean, that's like every time I call anyone. You want to call about anything, and it's just like, can you give me your address, your birth date? I mean, like I can find out your address and birth date and the last
Yeah.
four of your social security number pretty easily. I mean, that is extremely easy information to gather, right?
Mhm.
And that's the thing about security too, is that like, well, we can't ask them for their full social security number over the phone to verify their stuff because they're going to now be suspicious of that. We shouldn't be asking. We're
Yeah.
potentially liable for having transmitted that data in the first place. So it's always like just the easiest amount of data to gather, I feel like. And that's why it's always so successful when you call these places and you do these types of attacks.
Yeah. No, that's a really good point. That's very true. And I'm with you. Yeah, I think you're right. I think things are improving in that area. So maybe that was not quite the right path to be thinking about it. So that's a really good point. Because yeah, I mean, 10 years ago you had essentially no controls on a lot of these things, right? It was just, oh no, I mean, said it was Eric. I mean, he kind of sounded like Eric. He had a phone number from where Eric lives.
Yeah.
Good enough. Yeah, that's enough. So, and I know Brian in the
And
chat there posted something about that similarly, right? That there were no controls around password resets,
mhm.
and the management had no interest in doing that because they don't want to take anybody off, right? They don't want to
Yeah.
make the CEO sit through 10 minutes of verifications or whatever.
The one area where I do think that remote work and COVID related protocols, and stuff like that have really helped in this, like helped the attackers, not the security of the thing, is that at least in businesses and stuff, like a business help desk, generally someone would be calling about that internally. Now you
Hmm.
can't expect that anymore, right? So um you used to be able to at least just filter it and be like, yeah, that's an outside number. I'm not doing that. Now, realistically, you still could, even back then, you could still do it and just be
Right.
like, I'm out today. That's why, like normally it's on a post-it under my keyboard, but I forgot it now,
Hmm.
because I'm at home and I'm got a sick kid and I just had to get them, pick them up from daycare and all this, like, right, all this stuff. You create the stressful situation, why you're having such a bad day, and how they can help you out, and that's why you're calling from this other number, right? And so you could still get past it. Then it maybe just required a couple more hoops.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So it's an interesting question there in chat.
Yeah.
Um, when will AI solutions for blue team and security professionals catch up to the level that hackers are using to protect our companies?
I mean, I'd say that it already is, which is probably not a statement that you're going to agree with right off the bat. But I mean, reality is no one's been implementing AI solutions or LLMs more than the defenders right now. I mean, like, realistically, um, attackers using it to generate some code didn't give them a new thing. It made it
Mhm.
easier for some people. It made it so that some people who weren't intelligent enough or didn't have the skill set yet to do that now could, but it didn't give them a new ability, right? You could always write that code. You could always write that malware. Um, Similarly, for certain people who maybe English is a second language and they're trying to attack remotely or things like that, it has given them a way to polish up some of their language and some of their scripts and things like that. There's a lot of things it's allowed people to do who weren't capable of doing some of that stuff before, but it did not give them a new tool, a
Nope.
new attack, a new thing to use against your organization. Whereas AI and LLMs for defense is kind of at least giving a new tool. I mean, it's kind of the same
Mhm.
thing. It's not necessarily letting you look at something you couldn't look at, but it is giving you a more efficient and better way to look at some data and process and parse through a lot of data that you couldn't before. Um, so that's why I would say that. I mean, realistically, it's only sped up or just helped some people. But reality is, I can have AI write me a quick function to do something, but I would anything it generates also is not necessarily going to be better than something I could write. You know what I mean? Myself.
Yeah.
Generally, it's going to be worse than what I would write myself.
Yeah, and I think maybe it comes as a surprise to you. I totally agree. I actually think that the blue side of tooling has gotten significantly better. I don't know how much the actual LLM pieces are doing for that just yet. I also don't know how necessary they are. Um, in general, when we see failures on blue team tooling, it's not in sort of the engine itself, it's in the configuration.
Yep.
Um, and so one thing that we do here are we've been trialing a new process with it, our purple team exercises. Right. So someone on the red team is attacking something, someone on the blue team is working with that organization to watch that attack and try to track it down and that kind of thing, right? Most of the times that we're looking at this through an EDR solution or something like that, those attack techniques, those commands, those things they're caught. They're in there. If we want to go back through and look at the telemetry and recreate that attack, we can as a blue team person. Where it gets tricky is in the EDR's ability or the tool's ability to recognize that this is bad. And a lot of that is in the fact that red team guys are attackers are pretty good at living off the land at this point. They're using a lot of built-in things that are in Windows or in the OS, and so the EDR tools kind of struggle to learn is this bad or not because they may not be technically doing a bad thing. But a lot of them are getting really good at putting together, okay, here are five things that are normal, but anytime I see those in conjunction with each other, that equals bad. And so I do think a lot of tools are getting good at that. Again, I'm not sure I don't know that I would even technically consider that LLM or AI. It's just kind
Yeah,
of
I'm kind of lumping
rules-based
in like
stuff.
general like machine learning and large data processing and large data model manipulation and stuff, right? Like some of the stuff has been around longer than we've been working with LLMs. I mean, I don't know that language comes into much when we're talking about actual defense or attack, right? But
Yeah.
general, some of the ideas, the way we're working with large data sets and being able to process that is really helping, I think, quite a bit on the defensive side.
Yeah, yeah, it is. Yeah, it's making it easier to generate those types of rules and rule sets that say, hey, these 5 things equal bad or whatever. It is working. That is a good thing, and that will progress it quicker, right? So, not the actual AI living on the security appliance, wherever, but the back end that's kind of supporting that, or the LLM. So there's a lot there with that. But even still, like I, I don't want to discount the need for tooling. Tooling is absolutely needed. You can't have enough eyes on things to be able to just watch everything and be like, oh no, I saw this event ID with this command over here coming from PowerShell logging and be able to put all that together in your head. Like you just can't do that. So tooling is great. Um, but still, at the end of the day, our biggest weakness is just people. I mean, it's just people. Um, it's always a misconfiguration, or even more common, it's somebody clicked on a thing that they thought was okay, and it wasn't okay. Um, and maybe there were some indications there to show that it wasn't okay, and they don't know how to read those because they're not security people, and that's understandable. We talk a ton to organizations about man in the middle email compromise attacks, right? We've mentioned it on here, called it, evil proxy is one of the big attacks with that. Those are so convincing to a user, um, because they're legitimately logging into the email portal that they think they should be logging into. The only real difference is if they pay attention to the URL bar, because they're having that connection proxy through something else. And I've had some discussions recently about technical controls, and technical controls, by that I mean tooling, to stop that. And though there are some things you can do, they're never going to be completely effective. And so you really end up having to rely on your user to just say, hey, that doesn't look right. I'm not putting my credentials in there. Different things like that. So it's tough. But I actually, I do, as a defender, I think we have the tooling. There's not a lot of things that really evade everything at a high level. There are things that work and do evade tools, but oftentimes another tool will catch that thing, um, eh, or rules, that are configured correctly. We'll see it. One that came up, I can't remember if this was part of the Change Healthcare thing or not, but one of the ones that came up around that time that was being mentioned was Terminator. So Terminator is a piece of malware that disables antivirus, uses some old drivers and system files, and it's really, really effective. But even still, like, these are old driver files, and most tools are going to see those in a scan and say, "Oh no, that's bad. Let's get rid of that." So I think the tooling's there. Uh, for
Yeah,
once, I
look,
kind of think we're up on the red team a little bit. So
it's just always going to be a battle back and forth. It's always going to be a
mhm,
shift back and forth, and it happens all kind. I mean, like at granular levels. A lot of people might feel it from 1 month to the next, or one
mhm,
year to the next. Some people might look back and be like, "That year was really bad for us." Attackers just feel like they always get the leg up on us, and it might be the other way around some other years, right? But honestly, it's a day-to-day
it
power
is.
shift. It really is. Someone who sits there and writes malware, and works with a team that writes malware. I can tell you that the thing that worked yesterday doesn't work tomorrow. I mean, like
Yeah,
and then it's a constant shift. It's a constant battle. It's a battle that's going on behind the scenes for a lot of people. You know what I mean? Um, but it is a pretty even one in a lot of ways,
I think so. Yeah.
even if it doesn't feel like it is in the moment.
No, I mean, really, I mean, honestly, our purple team engagements have opened my eyes to some of the difficulties you guys run into. Like, I'm kind of surprised that I think I'm more surprised now when things get through. Um,
Mhm.
because unless it's a brand new, like, very, very new tactic, it kind of surprises me when things get through. So
Yeah. And a
yeah.
lot of times when they do, it is some kind of misconfiguration or just
Mhm.
lacking of knowledge that the configuration was different in the first place. And we
Yeah.
do run into that kind of stuff. I mean, completely unrelated really to the topic at hand, but I did a wireless penetration test last year and was on site. They had 2 locations. Went to the first location, was talking to them about it, and they said, "Yeah, you're going to go to our second location just to double check." But I mean, it's mirrored copy configurations. It's exactly the same. There's almost no reason for you to even go to the second site and drive out there. It's like, yeah, awesome, sounds good, but we'll just verify because trust but verify type of thing. Did the first location, went to the second location, completely different configuration. They were 100%. I mean, they were 99% sure that The configuration was the same at both locations. And technically we're talking about wireless here. So the SSIDs, the configuration of that, the AP, stuff like that, the passwords, all that, the type of security, that was all the same. But then the actual like firewall configurations behind what each network actually had access to once you got onto them, completely different. It was entirely not mirrored. And then that's why we test these things, right? To figure those things out. But sometimes people just think, oh yeah, we've locked this part down. I remember doing that. We had an initiative to do that. We went through all the process on it. We did it. And then it turns out you actually didn't.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, which is why, I mean, just a plug for like the red team guys and stuff. I mean, pen tests are so important. They're just really important because exactly that. It may be documented down to the letter that you guys, or that you as an organization had that initiative, you did the thing, you locked all the things down. Somebody forgot to hit enter somewhere along the lines, right? On one line, somebody forgot to do one access control list a certain way, that kind of thing, and it blows the whole thing up. And so that's why that's such really important. And I'm not trying to sell anything there. I'm just just saying it is
Yeah.
important.
All right. Well, we got less than 10 minutes left. We haven't even talked about Palo Alto. Do you want to do that? I feel like probably should.
Yeah, let's do that. You want to tee it up or me too?
No,
Does it
I'll let
matter?
you go for it.
Okay. Yeah, so just to be fair, we don't have a lot of information on this one yet. It did just kind of hit our radar earlier today. Um, but so for folks out there using Palo Alto devices, which I know there are a lot of right now, partially because of Fortinet and SonicWall and everyone else having struggles over the last few years, a lot of folks shifted over to the Palo Alto devices. They're really nice. Every time I've worked with one, I've been really impressed with them. But they just announced a 0 day in their Pan OS. This one is a CVSS 10 out of 10. So, as high as it goes. The CVE is it's CVE 2024-3400. It requires that the Global Protect VPN and device telemetry be turned on in order to exploit this. But I think, Eric, you looked at the exploit code, and assuming that was the correct exploit code, it was
Right. I mean,
kind of
obviously this
concerning.
is pretty brand new, right? So I did some digging around to see if I could find any proof of concepts, any code that was out there. Have not tested it yet, just looked to see what I could find. What I found was extremely trivial to execute. So if that is accurate, and I will go test it likely this weekend, but if that is accurate, this is something that I would definitely make sure that is patched and not affecting you, because it'll be very easy to take advantage of.
Yeah, absolutely. And it does look like they're not going to fully patch it until the 14th. So was it Sunday? Yeah.
Mhm.
So Sunday, they are going to do some hot fixes. And then they also have announced some mitigations. As always, just to be extra cautious here, but particularly because we don't know a lot about this one yet. Um, if you have a device and it has been vulnerable for more than a few minutes, and it likely has, and so we just found out about this today, you're going to want to thread hunt those devices, do as much verification as you can to see if those were exploited, and then if they were exploited, were any persistence mechanisms left behind, that kind of thing. If you need help with that, get help. Don't just assume. Reach out to your security vendors and see who can help you out with that to take a look, including probably Palo Alto. I would assume if you've got support contracts with them, they're going to have some information there as well, that we probably don't have yet. But yeah, this and it also there were just 2 days ago there was another vulnerability. It looked like it was more about a denial of service attack for the Palo Altos, so not quite as concerning, but still a worry. It's just kind of what we expect, right? As folks shift from one technology, one vendor to the next because of different problems, it's, I mean, as Rob put in the chat when we were talking about the red and blue kind of back and forth, a 10-foot ladder, or I'm sorry, a 10-foot fence and an 11-foot ladder, right? I mean, it's always going to just, the attackers are going to follow it where they need to be.
All right. Well, that's it. Awkward silence for a second.
Yeah, I was trying to think if there was anything else we needed to hit on that, and like I said, don't know a ton about it yet, just kind of what they've put out there, and that's really all of it. So if you got those devices, get an eye on them.
Yeah, get an
Yeah,
eye on them. Threat hunt is necessary. Stay on top of it. Mitigate, patch when you can when they release it, stuff like that, as usual. And like Pinky said, reach out to your security vendors, Palo Alto, whatever. make sure you got the help you need.
Yeah. Do it awkwardly though. Just be like, hey,
Do
we
it
were
as
told
awkward
that.
as possible.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, we keep making it more awkward too. It's pretty great. Like, yeah.
All right. Thanks everybody for joining us today. Appreciate you guys tuning in, dealing with us without Dad here.
This has been the awkward box.
This has been the awkward box with hey, my name is Eric, and
Yeah.
I, thanks for listening to the security. Bye.
Bye everybody. Have a good weekend.